everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and today I am going to review Jacquard Products' new Optical Brightener. Now this video is not sponsored, and I have not been sponsored by Jacquard to share this product. However, they did send me some of the Optical Brightener for free, and they have sponsored other content in the past. I actually did some product testing for them with this product around 2 years ago. And they're even using one of the pictures I sent them on their website. So before we jump in, I do want to give a few caveats. One, when I wrote to Jacquard after testing this product, the words I used were game changer. Because if you look at this old image, you can see yarn that is like off-white, but then looks brighter after it has been dyed. This really only looks this way when you're in natural light. Under artificial light, you don't see as much of a difference between the dyed and undyed. And these examples that I'm showing here were dyed at a 1% depth of shade with 1 gram of the brightener per 100 grams of yarn. And I'm saying this with an asterisk because the product that I tested 2 years ago was more potent than this unopened bottle that they sent me now. And I believe they told me that they recommend using 2 to 3%, so like 3 grams of dye per 100 grams of yarn. So that's more than what we had used before. I don't know what this is cut with, but we're gonna talk about textural differences and try to give a full review on how it looks. So before we go dye the yarn, and I'm going to be dyeing Knit Pick Stroll Fingering Weight yarn today. This yarn is 75% superwash merino wool, 25% nylon. Let's go take a look at our undyed yarn in natural light outside and under a black light.
And I don't know what I'll be doing later, but I just wanted to show the 2 potential skeins closer to my elbow that I have not dyed yet. One that is clearly just still in the wrapper, in the shade, and in the sun, to just show, oh, I gotta rotate, to show that they're all looking the same beforehand. Okay, and I'm inside. We have our yarn, and I'm gonna turn on a black light, but I need to use my other hand. Okay, and you can see that we have fluorescence in the label because it probably has some kind of optical brightener in it, but not in any of our yarn now before it's dyed.
Eventually, I think I'll finally edit that video from me product testing that dye. I'm gonna go ahead and pre-soak our yarn. I'm only planning on dyeing 1 right now, but depending on what I see, there'll be another that is ready to go. I'm gonna go ahead and pre-soak it in plain tap water with no acid. And I'm already anticipating the trippiness of using a pigment that you cannot see. I think it looked a little bit yellow when I dissolved it last time, but again, it was 2 years ago. I haven't looked at the footage. I don't remember. So I'm gonna pre-soak it for at least 30 minutes, and then we'll be back.
Okay, I am wearing my deluxe rubber respirator mask, safety glasses, and gloves, which is what I wear whenever I'm gonna deal with a dry dye powder. Oh, and I went to go open it and realize that there is tape around the outside. I wonder if there'll be a seal. Inside there is. All right, and so this brightener is very yellow looking, which I will say is very similar to how my original sample from 2023 was. Now the yarn that's 2 years old, ooh, it's very like, it's not very clumpy, if that makes sense. Let's try to get 3 grams. Okay, that was, okay, 3.05, good enough. We are smack dab in the middle of the range, and this is 3 times as much as what I had used last time. Now I'm going to get some hot tap water so we can dissolve this. I am not worrying about the volume of water that I'm using to dissolve this. It is clumping a bit on me. But seems to be going in pretty easily for 3 grams. It does have this off yellow ivory look to it. But normally if it was 3 grams of any other color, it would look really dark. But this should not add color on our yarn, at least it's not supposed to. I'm trying to get it all dissolved, but that's actually pretty darn good. We're done with, and now since we're done with the powders, I'm going to remove my respirator mask.
And actually in those 30 seconds, it went from being opaque to pretty translucent. I will say, it smells a bit like paint.
So it's not completely odorless.
Here in my dye pot, I have 16 cups of water, and I'm going to bring over the black light. Okay, it looks purplish on the water. We see it glow purple. That's just the reflection. But check that out. Oh my gosh, and you can see,
I see some little spots on my counter where there's maybe been fallout of this. Oh my gosh. I thought I was recording and I was not. I just poured the color in and rinsed the cup out. Oh dear. But you can see, hey, our dye now. There's color, there's a little bit left in here. I'm gonna rinse out. But this looks clear, but it does look different from before because we can see that it glows under the black light. And I am going to rinse out this container to the best of my ability. So what I had in here was 16 cups of water. We added our 3 grams of dye, and I am going to start with 2 tablespoons of white vinegar. I am not following the instructions on the container. I'm more of using my instincts for acid dyes and what I would do because that's what makes sense for me. But it is really, really trippy to then, and here's some of our pre-soaked yarn, just 100 grams of yarn. It's really, really trippy to be adding yarn to dye that I can't see. But the reason why I'm not following the instructions is just because I want to use my instincts. Everything glows. Which is good to see. Now, how will we know when all of the dye is absorbed? I would expect that it would start to look purpley again instead of glowing. But now I'm going to take this to the stove and start heating it up. The instructions did say to heat it for 30 minutes. And actually, now that I have our yarn in here, I am going to add more acid. I'm going to add another 2 tablespoons of white vinegar to bring us up to 4 tablespoons of vinegar in 16 cups of water. That is a proportion that I use a lot. This is just really, really weird. And there's deja vu because I know I've done this before with the prototype. I'm gonna wait and let this finish heating up before I start the 30-minute timer. But I don't think it's that big of a deal. I feel like I'm a little all over the place right now, but the reason why it's significant that the new jar is opaque and the sample that I briefly brought in is not, is that normally I store my acid dyes in closed containers in a cool, dark place. And the fact that this is in a black container indicates to me that it is likely light sensitive and light could degrade it, which means that that older sample I have, which has been staying on my shelf that has some sunlight, may not be as potent and fluorescent as it once was. But the yarn that I dyed 2 years ago is still fluorescent, and that was stored in like a drawer in my office. But it's worth me noting for future Rebecca, I do have some black light blue that I've had up there as well, and so that has the same pigment in it. And we do know that fluorescent pink dyes are not as light fast as other pigments, and they can fade with exposure to sunlight. And so, yeah, I mean, it makes sense if you're gonna have a big jar of something to have it be black. But anyway, let's go check in on our yarn. As this heats up, it is worth noting that I used a brand new zip tie for today. I used even a brand new cup, not a new spoon, but a brand new cup that I will reuse to weigh out this color. I wanted to avoid bringing in other pigment into this project as much as I possibly could. It's taken a while for this to heat up today, and we're just about hot. It's maybe been 20 minutes or so. And I just want to show that things are looking, the yarn's floating a little different. I don't want to bring the tongs over yet. I don't really want to touch it just because I don't want to accidentally introduce color in. But I think a lot of the color has absorbed just by my gut. You know what I'll grab? Okay, I scrubbed my tongs to make sure that they were dye free. But yeah, that's starting to look purple in the water. It's seeming like more and more of the fluorescence is in the yarn, and we aren't even that hot yet. And so this just shows that my pot may be heating up slowly, but the color is sinking into our superwash yarn pretty quickly. So I'm now gonna set that timer for 30 minutes and then we'll be back. It has been 30 minutes. And to help with all of my paranoia, because in the trial that I did, one of my skeins picked up color at some place. Maybe it was in the dye pot or something. And so I'm like, ooh, gotta be careful. Okay. All right, but I'm now gonna remove the yarn and I'm bringing over the black light. Hey, it is looking purple. That's how it looked before I added dye, which I know I missed that one moment on camera. But now as for our yarn, our yarn is glowy. I don't think it's showing up that well on camera, but in person, woo! It looks good. Okay, I'm gonna set this yarn aside to cool completely, and then we can wash it. As we go to wash our optically brightened yarn, I'm trying to tell if it feels dry, even though it's wet. I can't say anything for sure at the moment. I am added it to some cool water. I'm adding a little bit of dish soap. The dish soap is blue because I'm just trying to be very, very conscious of any textural differences that we see on our yarn. Now, I'm not planning on checking the rinse water with the black light to see if we are leaking some of that optical brightener. I don't know if there's fluorescence in soap. I don't think. Trying not to overthink this. I'm trying to treat this as similar to other projects that I've done as I can. And we're not gonna worry about color bleeding. And the only other thing that I can think of right now is that I don't want to take this and put it through my spin dryer because I'm being so careful to avoid any accidental color transfer onto this yarn, which normally is not something I would worry about, but because that happened when I dyed the first version of this colorway, that's why I am thinking of it. Well, one of the two. I think the one with less of the thing did. Now I am harshly squeezing out water, and I'm trying to say it almost, and this is me being really nitpicky, we'll see how it feels in the end. It almost feels a little bit how your hair might feel after a clarifying shampoo before you've added conditioner. But I don't know if that feeling will stay. And again, I don't want to put it through my spin dryer, which maybe could or could not add some textural differences. But I'm going to hang it up to dry and we'll come back in a few days and compare this to the older skeins and talk about it more. I'll add, I've never had color transfer from the spin dryer, but I'm just being paranoid. I have 3 white yarns right here. We have some undyed Stroll. We have our 3% depth of shade of the Optical Brightener that I just tested. And we have the 1% sample of the, what we know is more potent prototype that I dyed 2 years ago. I would say the 2 skeins on the left are both definitely more white than the Stroll we have. Now in my dining room right now, we have artificial light, but there is some natural light that comes in here as well. And in fact, now you can see we are only looking at natural light And I would say the two that we've dyed definitely look brighter. But here is now one test. The black light. Woohoo. Okay, I would say the 3% in the middle looks very similar to that 1%. And then of course our undyed is not fluorescent. Now I do also have a 0.5% depth of shade that I dyed 2 years ago. That skein did have some stains from something on, which is why I was so paranoid. I mean, I guess they feel similar right now. Like, they all feel very fluorescent. It's hard to see the difference. I do feel like the one I just brought in is a little bit less fluorescent than the others. So I would say a 3% is a really good starting point. But let's go outside.
It's late afternoon, so we're in the shade, but we looked at those two in my hand earlier, but now I've shifted it to the middle. Our optically brightened skein at the 3% is brighter in natural light in the shade than our undyed stroll. I'm going to move over to the sun, late afternoon sun, and you can see that as well. It is subtle. I think if we bumped it up to a 5%, it would probably be a little more dramatic, but it's unquestionably, I feel like it's easier to see in the shade, brighter than the original stroll. It is definitely the most dramatic outside under natural light, but it is still visible indoors.
But Rebecca, how does it feel? And I would say maybe it feels slightly different. I'd say it feels similar to the original prototype I used. Maybe it feels a hair drier, but it doesn't feel bad. It doesn't feel like off, and I think if I wasn't really looking for it, I might not have noticed. Yeah, I don't notice something texturally. I should probably try this at a 5% depth of shade, which I don't know if I'm going to be able to do in time for this particular video, but it works. It definitely works, and you can absolutely see the difference here in my dining room. You know, if we put that on top, it is subtle, but I feel a difference, and it's similar to the one that I felt when I was like, I need to bring this outside because it looks whiter to me. And as I said on their website, that's just because it is fluorescent, and so that blue that we're seeing in the fluorescence with the black light, when there is UV light around, it's gonna make the yarn look brighter. And I think that's just fun. But in natural light, you can barely see some of this pink blush. Oh, there's some that I got on one of these skeins. I don't know if it was like in my pot, probably. Oh, that irked me. So I was very, very careful this time. Personally, I am much more likely to use this optical brightener to give us a fluorescent white to use in combination with other colors and things, just because I think that that'll be a lot of fun. But please let me know in the comments what kind of situations you would use this in. I really hope that Jacquard will reach out for me to product test things in the future. It is really fun, and I don't know, I just really enjoy it. Initially, the whole thing started because I'm like, oh, it would be fun to have that colorless fluorescent acid dye that's in black light blue on its own to make a fluorescent white. Because imagine dyeing a yarn with a pop of a fluorescent rainbow where the white is also fluorescent. That would be so much fun, right? And because, you know, and they were like, oh, is this something people might be interested in? And I was like, yeah, I think so. Those of us that like fluorescent colors would really enjoy having this. And then when I dyed it and realized I was like filming conclusions inside, I was like, you know, it almost looks like one of these is more white. The ones that I've dyed are more white than the original. And I took it outside and oh, it was so clear. Now, could you mix this with any dye to make any color fluorescent? Unfortunately, no. What we know from playing around with black light blue, if you mix a pink in with it, that kills the fluorescence. Something about the two pigments, the colors quench each other, and so then you don't see fluorescence anymore. And that is just sad. You probably could get away with certain colors mixing a little bit in to make something fluorescent, similar to how black light blue has a little bit of blue pigment mixed in with the fluorescent acid dye, but your mileage will vary. And yeah, I think that, I don't know, it's just gonna be so much fun to play around with. But of course, this product has been released, and the photos that they have with it are not of this, me using this, they're me using the sample that I think was more potent, which does make me feel a little bit concerned because I don't know if it's like an endorsement from me or not. Again, I wasn't paid to do this. I did it because it's fun and I got to be the first person to play, or the first person outside of the company to play around with something new, and that was really exciting. And so I really enjoyed that, and I really, really hope I like this as much as I enjoyed the original colorless fluorescent acid dye that I tested. Because again, when I emailed them, I was like, this could be a game changer. Were my words back then. I went for the average ratio of 3 grams of dye per 100 grams of yarn today. But would you like to see me do some kind of gradient here where we play around with different depths of shade and see how much we can push this and what differences we will and won't see? If that's something that you're interested in, please let me know down in the comments below. We could set something up. We could do probably serial dilutions on mini skeins, makes the most sense. We could cold process that and do a bunch of samples. But today's is more of a proof of concept and showcasing something that is pretty darn cool. I don't know yet if I'm going to be listing this yarn in the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop, mainly because I don't normally list a bare, a white version of my yarn because I play with so many different yarn bases. I know there are other indie dyers who will, because they will sort of wash the bare yarn similarly to how they treat like their dyed yarn, so that way they can offer the same bases to customers. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. I just also happen to tell you guys where I source my yarn from. So I suppose if you wanted the same base in a bare form, like a white version of it, you could go buy it directly from the supplier. But if you ever are hoping to have a white yarn to go along with a yarn that I've dyed, it's always worth messaging me about it on Etsy. But I am so excited. I love fluorescence so much, and it's just so much fun to play with. And it was also really fun to give Jacquard feedback of what I thought about a product before they released it to the general public. And I hope they'll reach out to me again in the future. And again, I have no financial stake in this release. This video is not sponsored. I was not paid for giving feedback. They did give me free product, I suppose, but all the thoughts and opinions are my own. And I really hope that you've enjoyed this video. I love to play around with color, and it's still weird to play around with an absence of color. But this is so informative for me, and I'm going to try to think of ways to play around with this more in the future. The one thing I will caution is don't try to mix this with pinks because that'll dull the fluorescence. I don't remember if I said that already, but this shouldn't really be mixed on its own with, say, hot fuchsia, which maybe that's an experiment we need to do. Maybe we need to use the optical brightener and then dip it into hot fuchsia, similarly to how we dip dyed black light blue into fluorescent fuchsia to see how the fluorescence kind of went away and dimmed it. I believe that that's what we saw. Oh my goodness, that was a while ago. But anyway, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. And that is by far engaging with the videos, giving them a thumbs up. All of that is the biggest thing you can do to help support all of the content here. Thank you so much for watching.